All right, let's see what you guys thought about today's questions. Number one, is the friar's plan a good one? So let's take a look at this plan. It's on page 245. So this is after Claudio has humiliated Hero at their wedding. Hero has fainted. Claudio, Don Pedro, Don John have left. And there, Leonato is currently blaming Hero. And then the friar says, 202, uh, your daughter here, the princess left for dead. Let her a while be secretly kept in, and publish it that she is dead indeed. Maintain a mourning ostentation, which means appearance. And on your family's old monument hang mournful epitaphs. So they are a noble family. So they are buried together, and there's like a stone thing to mark out where their family is buried. That's their family's monument. And he says, hang mournful epitaphs. So write down like words of mourning and hang it on the monument. And do all rites that appertain unto a burial. So pretend like you are burying Hero. Leonardo, what shall become of this? What will this do? I have to say, like, these questions tell us that this is an early Shakespeare play. It's a very simple, not very clever way to get characters to tell us information, to ask obvious questions. Later in Shakespeare's career, he does not use this kind of thing. Characters just kind of talk. So like, why do this? Friar. Mary, this well carried shall on her behalf change slander to remorse. That is some good. But not for that dream I on this strange course. But on this travail look for greater birth. She, dying, as it must be so maintained, upon the instant that she was accused, shall be lamented, pitied, and excused of every hearer. For it so falls out, that what we have we prize not to the worth whilst we enjoy it, but, being lacked and lost, why then we rack the value, then we find the virtue that possession would not show us whiles it was ours. So this is a 40-word way to say that we don't know what we lose until we lose it. We don't know what we have until we lose it. So will it fare with Claudio. When he shall hear she died upon his words, the idea of her life shall sweetly creep into his study of imagination. And every lovely organ of her life shall come apparelled in more precious habit. So first of all, organ does not mean like the lungs, the liver, the stomach. Organ here means part, every lovely part of her life. We can see the meaning of the word organ today in the word organize. Have you thought about this? Why is it organized to make like an organ? Because you are taking everything and putting it into parts. You are organizing it. Shall come apparelled means become dressed. In more precious habit means clothing. More moving delicate and full of life into the eye and prospect of his soul than when she lived indeed. Then shall he mourn, if ever love had interest in his liver. Okay, so this part, the liver is actually the liver. According to the medical theories of the time, the body was ruled by 4 different liquids called humors, and the humor related to passion lived in the liver. So if ever love had interest in his liver, if ever he felt love coming from his liver, and wish he had not so accused her, no, though he thought his accusation true. So the friar is saying, if we pretend like Hero is dead, even if Claudio thinks that he's right, he will still regret being so harsh and humiliating her in public. Let this be so, and doubt not but success will fashion the event in better shape than I can lay it down in likelihood. So here he's saying, if it works, it will turn out much better than I can describe it to you now. But if all aim but this be leveled false, so even if it doesn't work, the supposition of the lady's death will quench the wonder of her infamy. So even if this plan does not prove Hero's innocence, it will make her reputation better. And if it sort not well, you may conceal her, as best befits her wounded reputation, in some reclusive and religious life, out of all eyes, tongues, minds, and injuries. So if even plan B doesn't work, if even Hero's reputation does not improve, then since she's already supposed to be dead, you could just hide her away in like a convent or a religious institution uh, to keep her away from people's discussions and awareness. This is something that often happened in those days. Do you think that every nun is a faithful woman? Not always. Many times, people join a church organization to hide away from life. Whether it's a woman in Hero's position who is slandered and has lost her reputation, or whether it's a man who, for example, has lost all of his debts, or he was revealed as a traitor or something like that. He might run away to a monastery, become a monk to hide away from the world. So in those days, not every nun or monk was truly religious. Sometimes they are there for personal reasons. Okay, so to summarize, the friar's plan is to say, we'll pretend like Hero has been killed by the humiliation. Hopefully, that will make Claudio reconsider his actions. But even if Hero is not proven innocent, at least it will make her reputation better in death than in life. And if that doesn't happen, it's easier for us to hide Hero in a religious convent to protect her, uh, because we don't have to explain where did she go. She's already dead. So the group I talked about this question with agreed that the friar's plan seems like a very good plan. He even thought out, like, what if it doesn't work? There's a plan B. What if that doesn't work? There's a plan C. And it shouldn't be a surprise that the best idea comes from a friar. He is probably the best educated person in this group. In order to be a priest, he has to study a lot of theology. He has to learn Latin. Um, Don Pedro and Leonato are also well educated, but they don't have to learn theology. They don't have to learn too much about religion and philosophy. So the friar has the best education. He gives the best plan. Now, there is one downside to this plan. If Hero was innocent and was not the woman in the window that Don Pedro and Claudio saw, that means that they saw another woman. And that woman would know that Hero is innocent. So one way to clear Hero's name would be to track down who is that woman and get her to tell everybody the truth. The problem with that is all the blame would then fall on that woman. Now, we know that the woman was Margaret. So from Margaret's point of view, if Hero is still alive, and then she still has the chance to save her lady by telling the truth and taking the blame on herself. But if Hero is dead, and Margaret confesses, then Margaret gets all the blame and Hero is still dead. So by pretending that Hero is dead, it actually makes it less likely to discover the truth. But Margaret is a lower class person. They're not really thinking about like a criminal investigation. They're thinking about how to save Hero's reputation. And from that perspective, this seems to be a very good plan. Okay, do you guys have other thoughts or questions about number 1? No? Okay, let's move on to number 2. Speaking of this trickery, should Don Pedro and Claudio have been able to tell that this was a trick by Don John? Should they or could they have suspected? Is it possible? Is it expected? So the group I talked to about this, first of all, we should focus on exactly what happened because it's not the same as in the movie. Let's see, where is it? I think it's before the wedding, right? When the night watch catches uh, Baracchio and Conrad talking about what they did. Ah, there we go. Okay, yeah. So page 241. This is Act 3, Scene 4. Sorry, Act 3, Scene 3. Let's start from line 142. Baracchio. But know that I have tonight wooed Margaret, the Lady Hero's gentlewoman, by the name Hero. She leans me out at her mistress's chamber window, bids me 1,000 times good night. I tell this tale vilely. I should first tell thee how the prince, Claudio, and my master, planted and placed and possessed by my master Don John, saw afar off in the orchard this amiable encounter. Conrad. And thought they Margaret was Hero? Again, Shakespeare with the obvious questions. And thought they Margaret was Hero? Brachio. 2 of them did, the prince and Claudio. But the devil my master knew she was Margaret, and partly by his oaths, which first possessed them, partly by the dark night, which did deceive them, but chiefly by my villainy, which did confirm any slander that Don John had made, away went Claudio enraged, swore he would meet her as he was appointed next morning at the temple, and there before the whole congregation shame her with what he saw or night, and send her home again without a husband. So here's what happened. Baracchio spent some time in the evening with Margaret in Hero's room, and as he was leaving, Margaret leaned out of Hero's window and kept on saying loving words like, good night, farewell, come again, that kind of idea. At this time, Don John led Don Pedro and Claudio to the orchard, and from a far distance, they saw this happening. They saw some woman leaning out of Hero's window talking to a lover. But it was dark, and they were far away, and they could not tell who this woman was. But it's Hero's room, so it's most likely to be Hero. And Don John is standing there saying, I swear it's Hero, I know. And that's how they were tricked. So I was talking with this one group about this question, and they thought a long time about this series of events, and they realized that there's one key point on which Don Pedro and Claudio maybe should have been more careful, and that is Don John. Don John is the person swearing this is true. Don John is the person leading them to the orchard at the correct time to see this happen. Don John is the person bringing them this news. Should they trust him? Or is there a reason that they should not trust him? And this group believes there is a reason. When we first meet Don John, how is he introduced? I can never find this. Near the very beginning of the play. It can't be that early, right? It's 1-1. Ah, there we go. Yeah, okay. So page 225. This is Act 1, Scene 1. Line 140. 148. Leonato says to Don John, "Let me bid you welcome, my lord, being reconciled to the prince your brother." Which means that Don John and Don Pedro previously had some kind of conflict. And now the conflict is over, and Don John has sworn loyalty to Don Pedro, his brother, his half-brother. He calls Don John the brother to the prince. But if we go back to the dramatis personae, it says that Don John is Don Pedro's bastard brother. Bastard does not mean evil. Bastard means that Don John's parents were not married when he was born. So it looks like, I think it's probably they have the same father, but different mothers. So this gives us a clue. What kind of conflict did these two half-brothers have? Think about this. Don Pedro is the prince, which means he is the highest ranking person in this place. He has the most power. And here he has someone who appears in his life calling him a brother or half-brother. Don John should have about equal, maybe slightly less power than Don Pedro, but because he is only a half-brother, he probably does not have that much power. So we can guess maybe their conflict is Don John wants to take power from Don Pedro. If this is their problem, how did they solve it? How did they become reconciled? What happened here? Do you think Don Pedro gave him some more power? If someone tries to attack you to grab your power, would you give him your power? Probably not, right? You would probably try to get him locked up in jail. So this group I talked with agrees that it is most likely that Don Pedro somehow defeated Don John, took away whatever power he had left, and basically forced Don John to pledge allegiance and obedience to Don Pedro. So Don John is faithful to Don Pedro because he has to be, not because he wants to. And if Don Pedro is a smart prince, he would know this. He would know that Don John probably has revenge and ambition in his heart. And so if Don John is the only source of information, Don Pedro should try to find confirmation from another source of information. But he doesn't. He just believes Don John's interpretation of the mysterious woman in the window. So if we say that Don Pedro and Claudio should not have been tricked that easily, this is probably why. I say Don Pedro, right? Claudio is an idiot. Forget him. But Don Pedro should have known better. Other thoughts about this question? All right, number 3. Benedict says to Beatrice, "Thou and I are too wise to woo peaceably." Let's look at this. Act 5, Scene 2. Do-do-do-do-do-do. We're still in Act 3. Hang on. And 4. Aha, Act 5, Scene 2. Okay, so what's going on in this scene? This is, okay, so like earlier in the play, Beatrice and Benedict were tricked into thinking that the other person still loved them. And then the first time after that they get to meet is also after the thing with Hero happened. So it's not a very happy meeting. And if you remember that meeting, Benedict is trying to say like, "But you love me and I love you. Why can't we be together?" And Beatrice says, "Sure, but first kill Claudio." And Benedict is like, "Okay, fine, I'll go kill him." So this is the second time that they meet. And here uh, he tells Beatrice, "Claudio undergoes my challenge, and either I must shortly hear from him or I will subscribe him a coward." So like he has challenged Claudio to a duel. He's waiting for Claudio's answer. So he has fulfilled his promise to Beatrice. He has begun the process of trying to kill Claudio. And so after hearing this, Beatrice finally starts uh, returning Benedict's words of love. But notice how they talk about love. Uh, First of all, right after Benedict says, "I will subscribe him a coward," he immediately says, "And I pray thee now, tell me, for which of my bad parts didst thou first fall in love with me?" This is what we call a hard transition. 转得非常硬. Right? As soon as he says, "Don't worry, I'll kill Claudio. But first tell me, why do you love me?" And he also comes about this in a strange way. He says, "Which of my bad parts did you fall in love with?" And Beatrice answers in a similarly non-traditional way, "For them all together." She's saying, all your bad parts fit together so well to create a bad person. I can't simply fall in love with one part. I have to love all of the bad person. And then Benedict says, "I love thee against my will. I love you even though I don't want to love you." So like even when they are like being talking love words to each other, they're still kind of arguing with each other. So Benedict says, "Thou and I are too wise to woo peaceably." When we pursue each other, we are too wise to do so in a peaceful and traditional way. And very predictably, Beatrice also does not agree with this. It appears not in this confession. She says, "Not true. You are not wise." Right? There's not one wise man among 20 that will praise himself. So yeah, even when they're being lovers, they're still arguing. So the question here is, this sentence from Benedict, do you agree with this idea that they talk like this because they are too wise? And the group I talked with about this question um, had two ways of understanding the word wise. The first way is simply as smart. They're too smart, they're too clever to perform the traditional lover's roles. In other words, if Benedict walked up to Beatrice and said, "Can I compare thee to a summer's day?" Beatrice would probably laugh in his face. And so the group I talked with said it's because they're so used to behaving like this with each other, they know that if they try to pretend to be traditional lovers, it wouldn't be honest, it wouldn't be sincere. they would see through the pretense immediately. It would have no meaning. So instead of pretending to be peaceful, they say honest words to each other, but in a kind of loving, teasing way and not an arguing, mocking way. The second understanding of the word wise is wise. They understand too much about the world and about life and about each other. Remember, they have a history together. So this isn't a new romance. This is a rekindled romance. 叫什么？灰烬复燃 or something like that, right? There's the second time. So they already understand each other. They already understand their relationship. They understand, looking at Claudio and Hero, that a traditional relationship does not guarantee a happy relationship. So instead of trying to pursue an impossible ideal that they do not fit, they decide instead to be honest with each other, um, to love each other for the kind of person that they are, not the kind of person that would fit some kind of romantic ideal. So in both cases, it does seem like it makes sense. So that's why Beatrice, when she tries to find a way to argue with Benedict about this, she doesn't argue with the main idea. Instead, she points out that Benedict is not really a wise person. Okay, thoughts or questions about number 3? All right, moving on. Number 4. Are Claudio and Hero a good match? Why or why not? So I talked with a group about this question, and they said, it looks like on paper they're a good match, a good social match. Claudio is Don Pedro's lieutenant, one of the heroes of the recent battle, whatever that battle was. He has a good reputation. Hero is Leonato's daughter. Leonato is not the highest noble, but he is a high noble. Hero is his only daughter, and she also has a good reputation. So, on paper, it looks like these two are a good fit. However, as we have discovered throughout this play, they don't really know anything about each other. Like, they don't spend a lot of time together. When Claudio falls in love with, or let's say has a crush on Hero, he has this idea of Hero as like a perfect woman in his mind. He even asks Benedict for his opinion. Is Hero really this great a woman? Like, why would anyone ask Benedict about his opinions of women? It makes no sense. And then when Claudio pursues Hero, which is usually when a man and a woman get to know more about each other, he doesn't pursue her. He asks Don Pedro to pursue her for him. So even here, he doesn't learn more about Hero. And of course, Hero, the only thing she knows about Claudio is that he has a good reputation as a soldier. All the other soldiers like him. And that's it. So socially, yes, a good match. But personally, this group says they don't really know enough about each other to be able to decide whether it's a good match. And maybe it's for that reason that Claudio is so easily persuaded that Hero has been cheating on him. He doesn't have enough information about her as a person to say, wait, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't sound like something Hero would do. Thoughts? Okay, finally, question 5. Does the play have a message? And if so, what? Not every comedy has a message. But because we are in a classroom, there is a bias for the teacher, me, to choose something to read that does maybe have a message. So we can talk about this. And the group I talked with said, yes, they do think there is a message. And the message comes out when you compare the two main relationships, Benedict and Beatrice, and Claudio and Hero. So as we were saying for question 4, Claudio and Hero don't really know each other. So it's easy for some rumor to separate them. Uh, in fact, earlier in the play, remember, after Claudio has asked Don Pedro to chase Hero for him, Don John tries to manipulate him into thinking that Don Pedro wants Hero for himself. So remember at the scene where Hero says, yes, I will marry you, Claudio originally enters to confront Don Pedro and say, like, how dare you betray me? So Claudio is that kind of guy who is easily manipulated uh, because he doesn't have his feet on the ground, so to speak. He's living in his own mind about like why Hero is the ideal woman, or like what he as a lover should be saying or doing, instead of looking at the facts. Whereas Beatrice and Benedict, maybe because they have experience with each other, we earlier discussed how Benedict's uh, tyrant to women is a kind of performance, maybe to find a more realistic match is one of the possible reasons. So already Benedict and Beatrice are not looking for like the perfect ideal match. They're looking, if they are looking at all, they're looking for somebody who is sincere and honest and won't betray them. We know that Beatrice thinks that Benedict betrayed her. And from Benedict's behavior, as we discussed a few weeks ago, it does seem like he believes that Beatrice betrayed him. So both have been hurt in love, and that makes them more realistic. So if we compare these two, this group says, then the message of the story seems to be that a more honest and realistic romantic relationship is stronger and happier than a relationship built on empty ideals and imagined uh, roles and tradition. Love is not love which alteration finds. Okay, so that's Much Ado. Do you have thoughts or questions about this play? All right, so next week we're going to watch the movie for the last play, Macbeth. Um, but I do want to say a few words to introduce the play because this play is very interesting. We are finally going to read a Shakespeare tragedy. And personally, I like his tragedies more than his comedies. His comedies can be great, but his tragedies are amazing. So Macbeth is one of Shakespeare's late plays. Queen Elizabeth has died in 1601. Her successor is King James VI of Scotland, who now becomes King James I of Great Britain. King James I is very strange for England. England is a Protestant country. They have the Church of England, but King James is Catholic. England is supposed to be ruled by the English, but King James is Scottish. King James also believes in like demons and devils. He wrote a book called The Demonology, studying demons. He's a very supernaturally minded person. And today, when we look back at his behavior, it does seem like he could have been a little tiny bit of gay. So all in all, a very strange guy to be the King of England. Um, so to cater to his new king, to make his play more successful in the royal court, Shakespeare decides to write a play set in Scotland and filled with ghosts and witches and fate and prophecy and that kind of thing. It's a very spooky play. And he could do this partly because at this time Shakespeare has moved indoors. The Globe Theatre burned down in 1599, so now his acting troupe is performing at the Blackfriars, which is an indoor theater. They use torch lighting, right, fire. So, at this time, if you don't have fire indoors, it's dark, which means Shakespeare can now use lighting effects. He can do weird things with lights to create like storms and ghosts and weird images. And it makes the play even more spooky. Now, because of this play has all of this stuff, over the years, apparently, it has become a cursed play. If you perform Macbeth and you say the name of the play, apparently something bad happens. So over time, Macbeth has earned a nickname called the Scottish play. If you ever hear somebody talking about the Scottish play, they are talking about Macbeth. And if you ever find yourself performing Macbeth, please don't say the name of the play, just in case. So it's a tragedy, which means, if you remember, we mentioned this before, in a comedy, the play ends with marriage. In a tragedy, the play ends with a very important person dying. So in this play, lots of people die. It's a very bloody play. And you'll get to see more of that when we watch a movie version next week. And we're watching a movie, so I will not be late. We were going to start the movie on time. Okay, and then like after the movie, right before the following week, please finish up to the end of Act 1. Just Act 1. I say just, but if there's only one act, that means it's a long act. All right, so just finish Act 1 before 2 weeks. And then I have one more announcement, which is during this semester, I have been sending class emails, but because Moodle is new and weird, apparently many of you are not receiving these emails. So if you feel like something might be happening and it feels like I should send you an email, you can come to Moodle and check. I will update the date on this thing to let you know when is the most recent class email. And so you can come here to check. Okay, questions? Great. See you next week.